Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. And I'm joined today by Mary and Deanna. Mary and Deanna, can you please introduce yourselves and share a little bit about what you do?
Yes, thank you, and good afternoon. I'm Mary Post. I am the CEO for the American Academy of Neurology. We are the world's largest professional association for neurologists, and we are a staff of about 200. We are located in downtown Minneapolis with our headquarters, but we also have an office in Washington, D.C.
Excellent. And Deanna?
Yes, and I'm Deanna Ekholm, Chief Human Resources and Diversity Officer. I've been with the American Academy of Neurology for 6 years, and this is a very interesting topic for us right now as we continue to look at our hybrid and flexible work environments and keeping up with trends in the industry. So we're excited to be here and talk with you about it today.
And thank you for agreeing to talk about it. So tell me a little bit about what the American Academy of Neurology looks like in terms of flexible work and hybrid work. What is the situation currently?
So I'll start off, Deanna, and then I'll kind of hand it off to you as well. So again, we have about 200 employees, but they are located around the nation. We have an office in downtown Minneapolis and in Washington, D.C. We have primarily remote staff, as well as we have hybrid employees that work in a hybrid model. And I would think it's about 30%, about 70% of our staff are in that hybrid model, and about 30% are in that primarily remote. And that's a model that we shifted to as we came out of the pandemic, and trying to really meet the needs of our employees, as well as the mission, vision, and goals of our organization. And so the hybrid approach is we're 2 days in the office and 3 days where they can work primarily remote or can work remotely. And then those that are primarily remote, I think we are registered, Deanna, in 7 or 8 different states that they can then work from. And then, but it's primarily remote, not 100% remote. There are times where we do ask them to come into the office for organizational kinds of meetings. Deanna, maybe you want to add?
Yeah, it's definitely been an evolution for us as we've had to build a program that works for us. You know, we mentioned that we're a medical association. We're based in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis, Minnesota. A lot of our like organizations and the industry talent that we are looking for is in, Chicago area and Washington, D.C. And so we've really had to look at how do we approach a staffing model that lets us reach the talent that we need specifically for our organization, but not lose sight of the culture that we've created. It's a really important culture for us and how we come together and when we come together. So it's really been an evolution for us over the last 4 years, a little bit of give and take as we're trying to meet what employees are desiring and what's best for us as an organization. So as Mary said, we do have employees in different states. It's really important for us to bring them together on key occasions and see each other in person and work together in person when we can. But most of our staff are in that hybrid status. So coming into an office, whether it's in Washington, D.C. or Minneapolis twice a week. And then a lot of virtual meetings and connecting with each other in a virtual environment as well.
Interesting. So one of my clients that I helped figure out their transition to hybrid work, flexible work, is the Northwest Minnesota Foundation. So it's a nonprofit in the Northwest of Minnesota. And one of the reasons they chose to adopt a pretty flexible model is because Minnesota may not be the most attractive place to work, especially in the colder seasons. And it also allows people to not go to the office when it's really cold. So they're pretty flexible. I'm curious if that informed your decision-making in any way, and then generally what you see as the benefits, the biggest benefits of this flexible approach.
So some of the top benefits, I think, to this approach is really employee satisfaction and retention, right? Nowadays, to be competitive, we really need to consider these kinds of practices. And offering a flexible work options does enhance our employees' job satisfaction. It helps us reduce turnover rates. It helps us to attract top talent that we need. But also, I would submit to you that our engagement surveys have demonstrated this. It's proving that employees do appreciate the flexibility, and they're rating flexibility as an important benefit to organizations that they choose to join. Another component of that, though, I want to say is culture and creating that culture of trust. It's an offering the flexible work arrangements is a sign and demonstrates supporting building a culture of trust with your employees. Very different from before the pandemic. You're 5 days a week, you're in the office. It's that old butts in seats or seats. Yeah, butts in seats idea. You really have to trust when you can't see your employee in front of you working, that they're being productive contributors. Work-life balance is another really important benefit. Our mission is brain health for all, and part of brain health is a good work-life balance. So we understand that flexibility for our employees is helping balance their professional and their personal lives. And then I would just submit agility and resilience. Yeah, we proved that during the pandemic, that flexible model, it works. And it helps with people adapting to the changing conditions. So we continue to plan, and for the unforeseen future, we envision the continuity and responsiveness to this kind of working environment being important for agility and resilience for our employees.
Yeah, I would agree.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was going to say, I definitely agree with Mary on talent attraction and retention. We continue to see flexible options as a draw for both potential employees, but also something that's helping us retain our current staff. And as she mentioned, post-pandemic, there's this new expectation of that work-life balance. And so we're really trying to meet our employees in that expectation, as well as try to meet our business goals and kind of the continuity of how we do business, which is very much in person and serving our members and coming together and collaborating. You asked if kind of the draw to Minnesota or difficulty in getting people to relocate to Minnesota impacted our hybrid model. I would say to a certain degree, that we thought about talent in other areas and in allowing flexible work arrangements allowed us to tap into those different talent pools, more diverse talent pools than what we see in Minnesota. But it also has just given us an opportunity to think about people beyond the traditional work environment that may have caregiving responsibilities or disabilities that make a traditional work office setting challenging. So we really tried to build our model around flexibility, but continuing to meet the needs of the organization. And it's a hard balance to strike.
Yeah. So an interesting thing that I noticed when I worked with a number of Northwest Minnesota Foundation, several other associations and nonprofits, is that there's often a tension between the staff and the board, where the staff are more willing to and interested in a flexible work model, but board members tend to be a little bit more old school. They have a little bit more difficulty accepting flexibility. I'm curious if that's something you run into, or if that's not been an issue for you.
I don't, a little bit. I mean, it's come up early on and then transition back into the office. We have a beautiful headquarters office and actually a beautiful advocacy office in Washington, D.C. It's an asset to our organization. It's beautiful. We hold meetings there. Our board members come there, and it's engaging and dynamic when the staff and our members come together in that office. And so when they come and it's like, half full or a quarter full, it doesn't feel the same as what they maybe experienced before. So in that transition out of the pandemic and back into a more new norm in the office, it was a regular conversation I was having with the board members, and what my expectation was in terms of the staff coming back into this beautiful office that we have. But it's less so now. I find that they have adjusted themselves. Our board members are physicians. They see patients. They have to be in the office, but they also have telehealth. In that transition now, telehealth and how they see patients has changed. And so they're adjusting as well to this new environment. So I have found together, we have found this new normal in terms of how we balance these expectations.
Interesting. Okay, so I'm glad to hear that that's something that you've worked on and that the board has come along with you, because I've definitely seen other folks have trouble with that. Now, talking about what you talked about some of the benefits and also how you got the board to come along with you. What about some of the challenges you've been seeing, the frustrations, the challenges? What do you see as the biggest headaches associated with flexible work?
I'll speak to one, and then I'm going to hand it over to Deanna, because as our Chief Human Resources and Diversity Officer, she experiences it even more firsthand than I do. But I'm going to speak about company culture as a challenge and that alignment across leaders and how we lead and manage our staff with the expectations and accountability and how we are building and sustaining a strong company culture with flexible policies and the needs of employees around our policies and expectations. And just having clear and effective communication can be difficult across the different styles of leadership and expectations of the staff. And, you know, in a 200 employee organization, we're close and staff talk and experiences are shared. And so how do you balance that and maintain a strong expectation and culture without confusion and misalignment and frustration then that can come out of, well, what is the policy and what are the expectations? So just maturing into this new expectation and these policies and this culture and aligning ourselves with how we lead collectively is one of the challenges I would cite.
And I bet that, you know, in terms of the alignment, it must be especially difficult to align people who are hybrid versus people who are fully remote.
Yeah. Yep. And how intentional are you in terms of how you're engaging and getting the work done and aligning on, you know, goals and objectives? Yeah, it's challenging.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it is that perception of fairness, as we've talked a little bit about, like, it's just been this constant evolution for us. There isn't one model that works for all. And we're trying to be very transparent with our staff that we're going to continue this conversation to find what works best for our staff, their expectations, and us as an organization and where we can come together. You know, we looked at, before we decided what positions were eligible for that primarily remote, where they don't have to come in 2 days a week. We really wanted to look at the roles that they did. What kind of interaction do they need with other staff and with our members? Do they travel? So we had some criteria that helped us define what roles would be eligible for each. But we want to make sure that we continue that conversation and that we continue to evolve as the world continues to evolve. Kind of back to that thought about one model doesn't work for all. We're actually starting to notice a trend of newer staff in the workforce wanting to be in the office. So even if their position allows them to be primarily remote and only have to come in for certain meetings, there's this desire to be in a traditional office setting a couple of days a week. And so we're accommodating that. We love that. We want to see them in the office, and then we want to make sure it's a really good experience when they're there and they're not being forced to come in and sit in a, you know, a workstation where nobody else is around and there isn't meaningful interaction throughout the day. So I think kind of keeping up on that perception of fairness, you know, inequity, if staff aren't following policy, just really ensuring that our leaders understand the importance to hold people accountable, to keep conversations going, that there isn't an imbalance of expectations and people are being held to different levels of expectation. I think just some of the research or the reading that we've done just on isolation and disconnection is that we really felt it was important that we not create an environment where staff never have to come together. When we think about what our organization does and our mission of brain health for all, it is important that people are coming together and having times of meaningful connection. And so that's a key driver in our hybrid and flexible work model, is that we will have intentional times that we come together, because we think that that's so important to building our culture and collaboration and increasing morale, and then just increasing their overall health and well-being.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, tell me a little bit more about how you've solved, what you've done to solve these problems around culture, around fairness, around inequalities. What specific steps have you taken to address these problems?
Well, we have values. So we've updated our organizational values. We did a lot of work actually around this, and it aligned again beautifully with the work our board strategically was doing as we entered into this kind of environment, setting new strategic direction, looking at our values, and aligning our organizational values and including our employees in this process. Our Deanna's leadership and her team really brought them together in cross-organizational groups to talk about the culture we're trying to create and engage them in what does this look like now in our new environment, and finding ways really to recognize and celebrate the staff, bringing them together in unique and fun ways, how we incorporate joy and fun, how we engage the remote teams, with Zoom versus those that are in person. We have all staff meetings that are these hybrid, they're virtual joining us, they're in person and they're joining us. We bring in ice cream trucks to really encourage people to be in the office. We bring in puppies. But we take time to really connect in different ways, whether they're virtual or in person, and that's culture. And all of these different initiatives, I think, help us to address this transition and the different experiences people have in their different environments. So I think that's been central in some of this transition.
Excellent.
Yeah, those are great points, Mary. I recently wrote a LinkedIn post about this because I felt so strongly that there's ways to continue to connect your employees in these hybrid environments and mitigate some of these frustrations and things that come up with perception of fairness, or someone hearing about a message because they were in the office before another colleague.
Oh, yeah.
So really ensuring kind of consistent communication and alignment of messages is important to us. We try to cascade messages quickly and ensure that people are using the same talking points with expectations of, if it's a key critical message, our executive team, our directors, we're giving them timeframes in which we need these messages communicated. If it's not, we want to just create an opportunity that we know everyone's going to hear this message at some point through an employee newsletter, through a division meeting, but making sure that people have access to that same communication at some point. Communication is really key to us. We do also in the work that Mary's talking about through our updated strategic plan and values is establishing really clear performance metrics and having dashboards and ways that we're sharing updates with our staff, whether it's live on our SharePoint sites or at team meetings. So they know as an organization how we're performing, and then asking our leaders to do regular check-ins with staff so they know how they're performing, and just so that we're keeping people connected, both through social events and work-related events, so that people know, how is the organization doing? How am I doing? And giving leaders tips and guidance on how do you have meaningful check-ins, that it's okay to ask people, how are you doing personally? It's not just always about the work, but how are things going for you? And keeping a tab on your staff when you don't see them face-to-face often. So we do a lot of monthly leader communications and recommendations and guides and resources on helping them lead in this new environment, in this new way of work.
Excellent. Now, those are all great best practices. One thing I haven't heard you talk about, maybe you do this, but you mentioned about the junior staff who are coming into the office. And what I've seen with a number of companies I worked with, as well as other companies, is setting up deliberate mentoring programs for junior staff who are hungering for that mentoring, who are often coming into the office even when they don't have to, but who are not getting the kind of mentoring that they would like to get. So setting up a deliberate mentoring program where junior staff are paired up with a senior member from their team, and then a senior peer from their own team, and a senior peer who's not from their own team, to help them get broad cross-organizational ties and develop those weak bonds, which it's really harder to develop when people are spending more time remotely. That has been really helpful for a number of organizations to address those concerns from junior staff. I'm curious if you're doing anything in that regard.
So programs like that are absolutely, instrumental, I think, in people's career growth and development. So I agree. I think they work well. I think the way that we approach it at the AAN is really through a lot of cross-functional teams and exposure. We mentioned that we have 200 staff. That's a really nice size organization for people to get to experience different projects and programs at different levels. So a junior staff member could be sitting with a senior project manager or an executive team leader in a meeting and hearing firsthand what the organization's strategy is. We're looking for ideas, cross-sharing and cross-functional work together. So we've definitely approached it through some of those cross-functional teams. We also have an internship program that's growing and has been really strong, where we're seeing interns stay with us kind of more than that traditional summer internship. So we have year-long internship programs that really give employees and in these younger career individuals an opportunity to see what it's like to work in a professional setting in this organization and really have experience and exposure to many things that you wouldn't in maybe a larger organization. So we absolutely see a lot of value in that.
Dr. Gleb, I would also just mention that our HR team does a really good job working with the leaders at every level across the organization around the competencies it takes to be a leader and really building in that how do you lead oneself, how do you lead others, how do you lead leaders, and the competencies as you sort of grow in your journey as a leader in the organization. And built within that is the competencies of how you're mentoring and coaching those that you're leading. And part of that includes this competency or the skill to be understanding you have employees that might be virtual, that might be in this flexible hybrid, and how are you holding them accountable? How are you engaging performance? How are you teaching them to be successful in this kind of environment? It's a process like anything, right? It's not always easy. It's kind of complicated, but in our model of how you become a leader and how you grow as a leader, we work really hard to develop those competencies with the staff, and we have incorporated this into that learning, and that's how you be a mentor, how you be a coach as a leader. So I would submit it's something we're still developing a little bit in our work as leaders, but very much on our radar, the importance of that mentoring coaching skill.
Excellent. Now, as we finish up, what do you think will be the future of flexible work at AAN?
I think it's here to stay. Now, I'm going to just admit a little bit. I've had to really work hard to embrace this flexible. I love our office. I love coming to work in the day and seeing and engaging with my team and my staff and the people that I'm leading. And I feel like I'm a better leader the better I know the teams that I'm leading, the staff that I'm leading. My judgment, my critical skills, thinking skills are better when I know the people I'm working with. And sometimes it's hard to get to know them at that level when they're all over the place. So I've had to really learn how to lead in this virtual environment, how to lead in this hybrid environment in a very different way. And I'm going to tell you, I'm still even on that curve of learning how to do this really well. But I think it's here to stay. I don't think the future in terms of, like we mentioned, the benefits of really developing that culture of being able to bring the top talent into our organization and to do that in a healthy, engaging way, that we're going to have to be really good at being hybrid and learning how to engage those primarily remote people. But I also want to say, I think it's an evolution. I think we're evolving. So I don't know that we necessarily have it perfect right. I don't know if 2 days is the right model. If the hybrid 70-30 with primary is exactly the way it's going to be in the future. But we have demonstrated that we are flexible and we can learn and evolve based on what the environment is asking us to do. And central in that are our 40,000 members that we serve and our mission and our vision as an organization. So how we evolve to that will depend on how best we serve our members and what our mission is going to require of us.
Excellent.
I agree.
Thank you, Mary.
I think as an organization, as Mary said, we're going to continue to evolve. We're going to continue to see a strong desire from current and incoming employees for personalized work arrangements. I want to work where I want, what works best for me, when and where I would like to be. And so I think we're going to see kind of this spectrum of complete flexibility to organizations that are starting to go back into the office 4 or 5 days a week. And I think we're always going to find ourselves somewhere in the middle of that spectrum, continuing to give and take and work together. And as Mary talked about, that requires some trust building and ensuring that we're working together to meet the goal and mission of our organization. And as long as we can do that, I think that we can build a framework that supports our employees and supports the organization. So I'm excited. I think that we've got good dialogue mechanisms with our employees. We ask for their feedback. We listen to their feedback. We make kind of tweaks to our programs based on that. So I'm excited to see what the future holds as we continue to explore options that work for us.
I think there's always going to be a tension here. with this, with flexible
Sure.
situations, because there's such unique needs and expectations around that. But I think that tension's a good one, and it keeps us candidly kind of honest in how we're thinking about it, how we're addressing it, and how we're evolving with it.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing your expertise. It sounds like you're doing a lot of great stuff, and people are following along. Your staff are following along. You're getting your board along, which is always difficult for a nonprofit. Like I said, I've worked with a number that had difficulties, so I'm really glad to see that. Thank you for sharing your expertise.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you to the audience for checking out another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you checked out the show and leave a review. It helps others discover the show, and it helps us improve the show.